Kayvon Thibodeaux grabs all the headlines, but there were 5 other Ducks at the NFL Combine over the weekend. How did they do, and how are they projecting as pros for the 2022 NFL Draft? We get to that. Plus, Oregon basketball, disappointing end to the regular season. It's Pac-12 tournament or no NCAA tournament for Dana Altman's squad. Why was it so disappointing? There are a couple reasons why. We'll get to that today on Locked On Ducks. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, D1 play-by-play broadcaster, lifelong Oregon Ducks fan. Thank you for making this your first listen or your first view if you're watching on YouTube every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks every single weekday. Remember to like and subscribe if you have not already, whether you're listening to or watching the show right now, YouTube channel, Odyssey app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever, free and available on all platforms. Hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date with the Ducks every single day. 5-star reviews, nice comments. We like those as well. Today's episode brought to you by Run Your Pool. March Madness is here gloriously, and Run Your Pool has a better way to create your bracket. RunYourPool.com, the premier sports pool hosting service. So, talked about Kayvon Thibodeaux yesterday, all the noise coming out of there. But there are some other Ducks at the NFL Combine. 5 others, in fact. How are they going to project as pros and kind of where they stand after their performances at the Combine? Some of them didn't do so great, but I want to share this story first. I recently played golf, which I do a lot. You've probably picked up on that, right? You hear me in the Built Bar reads talking about bringing them on the golf course, which I do, by the way. Had one over the weekend. Works every time. I had the opportunity to play with a guy by the name of Cody Hoffman in St. George, Utah, which if you're a big golfer, you have to go to St. George. Bunch of amazing golf. Anyway, Cody Hoffman was a wide receiver at BYU from 2009, 2013. Taysom Hill was his quarterback for the last couple of years. He went to the Combine, put his name in the draft, was an undrafted free agent with the team that is now the Washington Commanders, which sounds like an XFL team, but it is what it is. So I was asking about the Combine, what the process was like, because Ducks are going through it right now. And we were on the par 4 12th. I just said, so what's the Combine like? Immediately, the first thing he said, one of the worst experiences of my life. I said, really? And he said, yeah, it's just they're controlling you, but they're pushing you at the same time in a way that is just not very enjoyable. You know, they'll wake you up at 4 a.m. and drug test you one day. Then they'll wake you up at 5 a.m. and test you on football knowledge the next day. They'll keep you really late to do media appearances or drills or everything. And he said it's just an absolute grind. And that basically what they're doing is they're trying to thin out the herd, right? They're trying to only have the people there who are so all in that they're willing to go through this process. And the Combine didn't used to be that way. It didn't used to be that way. It was much less complicated, 20 years ago. But as everything in society does, it has changed. It has evolved. And that's what it has become. And I'd never heard that before. I never met someone who went through it. He graduated in 2013, so he went through it pretty recently. And I can't imagine that, as social media has gotten bigger and there are more media outlets, more opinions, all that sort of stuff, I can't imagine that it's gotten more enjoyable to go through. And so I thought I'd share that today, talking about the Combine. And I thought that was an interesting story because I'd never heard anyone go through that before. So speaking of Ducks at the Combine, there were a handful, right? There are 5 others who are not named. Kayvon Thibodeaux, not looking great after the Combine in a couple of ways, but let's just kind of go through one by one here. CJ Riddell talks about him on a recent episode when he announced he was leaving for the NFL draft. I think he, can play in the league, but he's looking probably at about a late round draft pick at this point. 5'8", 194 pounds. It's actually 17 pounds lighter than he was when he started the 2020 football season. He has to perform well at Oregon's Pro Day on April 1st to pick up his draft stock because he's capable of playing in the NFL, but if he's going to play a lot, he's really going to have to show up because he struggled in just about every area. Down the board, every drill that he did, it didn't go particularly well for him, unfortunately. So hopefully he's able to pick it up. Johnny Johnson III, he also struggled a bit. 4.6 in the 40-yard dash. Not the biggest high-end speed, but here's the thing with Johnny Johnson. I think he's projecting right now, when you read scouting reports, as a 6th or 7th round pick. I would guess he'll be an undrafted free agent and he'll get onto a team. And the reason I feel confident about that is you draft guys, because of interviews you've had with them or the on-field production they had in college, all that sort of stuff. But when you're an undrafted free agent, typically the way that you're going to then make it, if you don't have those sorts of elite measurables, is you have to have that sort of heart and that sort of drive. And Johnny Johnson III, I think, is a really great story of growth. When you look at his career over the Oregon football, or at Oregon in the football program, do you remember him as a freshman? Because I do, and he couldn't catch the ball. I mean, he and Jalen Redd both struggled catching the ball, right? That was part of the reason that Herbert's college stats are not as phenomenal as they potentially could be, because they were just underdeveloped at the wide receiver position. But he was a playmaker by the end. He developed really good hands, made some tough catches. I remember one of the Pac-12 championship game 2019 against Utah. Herbert underthrew him a little. He jumped over the top of the defender and kind of grabbed it off his back in the middle of two guys. That's not a catch he was making as a freshman. I loved his physicality, blocking on the edge as well when he played for the Ducks. I think his career will go well for him, if it does. Like, I'm not confident that it will, because his measurables really are not that great. He's not an elite physical prospect for the Ducks coming out of college, that is. But he could succeed because of his heart, because of his drive and commitment to be better, because that was on display. And that resonates with coaches. It does. And I believe that if he's able to, have an interview with a GM and get a chance, he could carve out a role, even though he's never going to be a big-time wide receiver one. But I liked watching him at Oregon, and I think that the wide receiver position for the Ducks, I think they missed him. I think they definitely missed him when he was off the field with an injury. So I bet you he's an undrafted free agent. That would be my prediction. But maybe he snags a 6th or a 7th round draft pick. I don't know. The other wide receiver that Oregon sends out, Devin Williams, ran a 4.65 in the 40-yard dash. That's not great either. I mean, for a wide receiver, those are not really good numbers. I bet you Williams goes probably in the 5th round just because of his size, right? JJ3 is much smaller, but Williams is just such a big body that he's the kind of guy that can just get drafted based on his physical size alone. He's got good hands, can make contested catches. We know all of that. He's a good run after the catch guy, just doesn't have that sort of explosive breakaway speed. But could he play in the NFL? Yeah, I 100% think he could. Get to the other prospects after I tell you that this episode is brought to you by Stat Hero. I love March Madness and I love brackets, but I can't remember last time I actually went deep or even won any money. I'm hedging my bets this year with Stat Hero's NCAA Pick'em contests. Stat Hero's NCAA single Pick'ems pit the star of that was bad. Pits the star players against each other in an amazing hybrid between fantasy and sports gambling. I assure you this is higher quality product than that sentence that I just put out there into the ether. Start focusing on the players you know with a gameplay that doesn't rely on big spreads, long odds, or funky props. Stat Hero is the easiest and fastest way to get your sports action fix. The simple, sleek gameplay will have you playing in minutes. This is what daily fantasy is meant to be. Check out Stat Hero. So, back to the Oregon prospects this year. On the defensive side of the ball, there's a couple guys. We know about Kayvon Thibodeaux, of course. Verone McKinley, first-team All-American. He's, in scouting reports that I've read, 5th or 6th best safety in this class. And there are a lot of talented safeties. Kyle Hamilton is going to be probably a first-round draft pick from what I've seen. I love the NFL draft, if you can't tell. I'm a huge fan, and I love following, hashtag ProDucks on Sundays, and I know many of you do as well. McKinley is projecting right now as a 3rd round caliber pick. I wouldn't be surprised if he's in the 3rd. I could see him falling to the 4th because his upside is a little bit limited because of his size. 5'11", 194 pounds. That's not a particularly big guy. Is he a very good football player? Yes. I would want him on my team. But is he going to be a first, second, or third round pick? I would guess probably not. I think Williams goes in the 5th. I'm just putting these on the record because you never know if I end up being right. I think Johnny Johnson the 3rd, undrafted free agent. Devin Williams in the 5th. I think McKinley goes in the 4th. And, he doesn't have amazing speed and he doesn't have amazing size, right? Compare that to Javon Holland, who's just kind of a physical freak and was one of the highest graded rookies this year for the Dolphins in the whole league. He was really, really good. Holland is 6'1", 207 pounds. So he's about 15 pounds and 2 inches bigger than Verone McKinley. He's better in the run game, though Verone is definitely capable. But the reason that I would take McKinley anyway, despite him not being, a unique physical being, that is, his ball skills, anticipation, football IQ, off the charts. All of it off the charts. And he got so much better during his time at Oregon, playing in an era where we really had a pretty loaded secondary. When you look at the guys that we've sent to the NFL recently, Diamador Lenore and Thomas Graham and Javon Holland, there's just a bunch of guys up there who, Mikael Wright is about to be there. I'll get to him here in a sec. There's a lot of really talented players. McKinley waited his turn, played really good football. He earned that first-team All-American status. And I just was blown away by how well he's able to read coverages, anticipate routes, understand route combinations and where guys are going to go. You watch that Ohio State game, he makes a couple of plays where CJ Stroud makes the right read, makes a good throw, and McKinley beats him to the spot because he is so smart. He's reading the play, trusting his instincts. I love watching him play free safety. So he's able to make up with that, or he's able to make up for his lack of a high-end speed with that sort of anticipation and such. But, we'll see if that ends up coming back to, limit his upside a little bit, because everybody in the NFL is really, really big, really, really fast. And a lot of guys have great anticipation too. But can he play? Yeah, I think he absolutely could. Last guy that we'll talk about here that we'll be watching on Sunday soon before we get into Oregon basketball, Mikael Wright. And he's an interesting prospect to me. I think he's the most interesting in this class for Oregon. Thibodeaux, I know what he is. McKinley, talked about it. The other guys, we'll see if they're able to ultimately carve out roles in the league for themselves. But after that 2020 football season for Oregon, and after seeing what he did his freshman year, I thought Mikael Wright was trending towards being a first-round caliber corner. And it's definitely not looking that way. He's going to be probably a mid-round selection. He did not grade well at the combine. I think he ran like a 4.65 or something, which is surprising because I remember him running stride for stride with Chris Olave, who ran really well at the combine this weekend. I've always liked Mikael Wright. I really have. I think this could be a high upside pick for a team in the middle rounds. I bet you he goes in the 5th with Devin. Well, no, I'll put him up at the 5th. Yeah, I think Mikael Wright goes in the 5th. Along with Devin Williams, and Wright could kind of fade into, just a role player in the league who bounces around, but he could develop into a starting corner, because what I saw in 2020 and his freshman season 2019, a guy who can just lock on receivers and glue onto them, shut them down, and be the clear-cut number one corner on the field. But he took a step back in 2021. That is unquestionable. When you look at the stat, he was first-team All Pac-12 in 2020, and I think he was just Pac-12 honorable mention in 2021. I was surprised. I was really, really surprised. I was really high on him coming to this year, and I've always liked his ball skills, his footwork, his ability to anticipate routes. He's got pretty good size, but I just thought he would be more of a lockdown corner this year, and as I watched the Ducks defense, maybe it was scheme-related, but there were a number of times where he was getting beat. And that was not something that happened as often in 2020 when I would watch film and watch replays of Oregon games. So each of those guys should be able to find a team. Obviously, Thibodeaux will. McKinley clearly will. Mikael Wright clearly will. I think Williams, Verdell, and Johnny Johnson III might need to show something else at Oregon's Pro Day on April 1st. But all guys who are capable of playing, but they did not run well. I mean, up and down, I don't need to go into every single stat, but on the drills, the 40-yard dash times, or these Oregon guys, they did not grade well. Kayvon Thibodeaux did. He had a 1.59 10-second split, which I'm told is very good. I didn't know what that was, but that was very good. 27 reps on the bench press. He ran, I think, a 4.65 in the 40, which is really good for an edge rusher, of course. There's some potential here, but is this going to be Oregon's most loaded NFL draft class? Maybe not after Kayvon Thibodeaux, but these guys can definitely play. I 100% believe they can play, but the combine has definitely got their draft stock falling for several of them. I think for Dell and Johnny Johnson III in particular really, needed to get themselves into a mid-round draft pick. I think needed to show up well at the combine, and they just didn't grade very well compared to their peers. So we'll see how that all plays out. I look forward to seeing where these guys get drafted and what kind of roles they can carve out on Sundays. This episode is brought to you by Run Your Pool. March Madness, only a few weeks away, means you need to start thinking now about where you're running your brackets this year. Are you going for the usual, or are you going for the best? We've done our homework. We're going with runyourpool.com for our brackets. Along with standard brackets, Run Your Pool offers game types like Survivor or Pick-X, both of which are fun. They have options to added scoring for more intel to make your picks, all stuff you won't find at ESPN or CBS. Clearly, we believe Run Your Pool because, like I said, we're running our brackets there ourselves. There's no truer test than that. If you want to play against us for a shot at cash prize, join us at runyourpool.com/lockedon. While you're there, create your own pool for friends and family. Enter pure madness at checkout for $10 off your custom pool. All the rules and details will be available there. That's runyourpool.com/lockedon for your chance to win a cash prize. Football season might be over, Ducks fans, but. And I apologize. I've been having some screen trouble. So if you see me adjust it every now and then, it's because I'm trying to get it to come back to me. Football might be over for this season. Basketball is in full steam for pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the number one spot for all your sports betting needs. BetOnline remains the best spot for all your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. Not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, UFC, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. So we end today's show with Oregon men's basketball and the disappointing end they had to their regular season. And I think it's a valid question, when you hear people say, oh, it was disappointing. It was disappointing. Well, why was it disappointing? So let's answer that question. They came into the season with a lot of hype after adding guys in the transfer portal like Davion Harmon, Quincy Guerrier, and Jacob Young, in addition to having, a couple guys back, including Will Richardson, who was a preseason Pac-12 Player of the Year candidate. They were top 15 in the preseason poll, which is not very common for Dana Altman teams. It hasn't been at Oregon. You look over the years, there have been a couple, but usually how it works is Oregon is, maybe at the back end of the top 25, they start out of it and they work their way up to it. But this year, because everyone saw how much talent they had, Oregon was sort of a dark horse Final Four team and expected to be a top 20 caliber program all year, and they just weren't. They just weren't, and the talent that they added warranted that sort of hype, but it just never clicked. It has not clicked, and the season's not over. I'm not giving up hope because I never will. That's our job as fans, to remain hopeful no matter what. The season, it was just so disappointing to see the regular season end the way it did because Oregon right now had the chance with a few games left to clinch a spot in the NCAA tournament, regardless of what they did in the tournament, the Pac-12 tournament, what they will do, I should say. They had a chance to do that. I mean, even coming into the final two regular season games, which I talked about in yesterday's show, the opportunity was there. They got the split with the LA schools that Joe Lunardi said they needed. They just had to beat two teams who they'd already defeated this season and who, from a talent perspective, they are better than top to bottom, even without Will Richardson on the court for the Washington State game. Oregon, from a talent perspective, not a team perspective, but a talent perspective, better than Washington State and better than Washington. And the biggest disappointment of how the season ended was that neither game was even competitive. That was the most frustrating part to me. These were urgent games. Had to have them. Your resume is on the line to get into the tournament. And they were just kind of flat. There was just no urgency or desperation that I saw from the Ducks. I mean, it's not as if they weren't trying, but you have to be able to take it to another level, right? If trying and giving full effort is here, urgency level is up here. They didn't get to here. I feel like Billy Bean in Moneyball. That's my bar up here. But, Washington State was especially bad, but Washington wasn't good either. Both games, they were bad. They were down by over 20 points at one point against a team you're better than when you have to have these games. I mean, that was the most disappointing part to me. Not that they lost, but how they lost. And it's a discouraging thing to feel as a fan because, lots of games in any sport, football, basketball, baseball, softball, any sport, when you lose as a fan, you have that feeling of, darn, really wanted to win, would have been nice to have, et cetera, right? Yada, yada, yada. But there's a difference between the feeling of, darn, just didn't go our way. One of their guys got hot. It was a good team, just came up short. It happens, right? That's one feeling. That's not how I felt with these games. Because do any of you feel that way that watch these games? Or did you watch the games in Seattle and in Pullman and think, boy, that was a lackluster effort? Because it was. They weren't going after loose balls. They weren't boxing out hard. They weren't valuing every possession. It was just, they were just kind of going out there and playing like it was another day, like it was another game. And that's a frustrating thing to see as a fan. And the biggest evidence of that is the Washington State game. Dana Altman's teams have always been good defensively. That's been their hallmark. Offense comes and goes. That Final Four team had a lot of really good offensive players. You had Dylan Brooks. You had Tyler Dorsey until he got hurt. Chris Boucher. Pritchard was on there. Casey Benson was a nice player, right? There were a lot of talented guys. But the defense is always there. Dylan Ennis as well. They gave up almost 80 points to Washington, and that wasn't a good showing. 78-67 was the final score. Game was never that close. You allow almost 80 points to a middling Washington team. Then you go up into Pullman, and that loss on Thursday not only didn't tick you off enough to bring up a level of intensity that you didn't show Thursday in Seattle, but Oregon goes up there and allows 94 points to the Cougars. Kyle Smith is a good coach. Washington State is a year or two away from being a good team in this conference, a really good team. They're a solid team. They're not a team you allow 94 points to. And it's hard for me to come on here and say these sorts of things, but I cannot in good faith come in here and tell you Duck fans that didn't see the games that, well, the effort was there and a couple things just didn't go away. No, I didn't see the effort being there. They were late on closeouts. They didn't chase after loose balls. The box outs were often lackluster. They allowed 19 three-point shots for Washington State in the first half. That's an unconscionable number. To even allow that many looks, the Cougars made 9 of them in the first half. They ended up making 16. You allowed 34 shot attempts from beyond the arc. That's an effort thing. Defense, first and foremost, is effort. That's why I brought up Dana Altman and his defensive prowess as a coach over the years. Defense primarily is about effort. You allow 94 points, your effort wasn't there. You have to bring it from the jump, and they just did not. So now they go into the Pac-12 tournament. They have to win, or it'll be an NIT season. And I know no one really cares about the NIT, and it's just an opportunity for schools who almost got into the big dance to try and find a positive to end their season on, a positive note. But the NIT is more for teams that are up and coming, that are trying to prove like, yeah, we can play at this level. We can win in a tournament environment. We can beat good teams, game after game. That's how you feel good about the NIT. But Oregon will go into it if they don't win the Pac-12 tournament, not feeling great. The other thing, and I'll close with this, Will Richardson had as many points against Washington State as he did against Washington. He didn't play against the Cougars. That's not good. It's not good when your best player is scoreless. He has been really bad down the stretch. And Dana Altman said he wasn't feeling well. And trainers advised he passed concussion tests, but the trainer said, hey, you should probably keep him out. So his status for the Pac-12 tournament is uncertain. And I know that in the Oregon basketball realm right now, Will Richardson, not the most popular guy because he hasn't been playing well. And I'm sure Will would tell you that, right? I don't know him. I don't really know anybody that knows him, but he is not playing up to the standard that he is capable of. So I know that it's been frustrating to watch him struggle and watch the team struggle along with it. But Will Richardson has to be good in the tournament if Oregon is going to pull this off. He does. He just has to be. When Oregon is at their best, Will Richardson is at his best. And I know recency bias makes it hard to realize this because he has played so poorly as of late. But maybe he just needed a day off. Maybe he needed to, get his head in a better place, literally and metaphorically speaking. He is capable of playing point guard at a high level. This is a guy who's a 2-time Pac-12 Player of the Week this year. He didn't do that by accident. We've seen it. He's capable of doing it. He has to pull it out now. Because if he doesn't, Oregon's season will end in a way that will be unfortunately disappointing. And they didn't get a first-round bye because they weren't able to clinch one of the top 4 seeds. So Oregon's first-round game, it was potentially a high note to end today's episode on. They play Oregon State in the first round. Told you earlier this year, I'm never against beating the Beavs. Never. Don't care what their record is. Don't care what kind of season they're having. So hopefully Oregon can beat the Beavs and get into the quarterfinals and not lose in the first round. But the only thing that could make this year for Oregon basketball worse, the only thing that could make it even worse, because I think we've let the full disappointment sit in, would be losing to the Beavs, who are 3-27. So please, Ducks, go beat the Beavs. Just don't lose to the 3-27 Oregon State Beavers. That's all we're looking for here as Duck fans. I hope that's not too much to ask for. But in the tournament, anything can happen. It's March. We're taking nothing for granted. Hopefully they come out, punch them in the mouth, carry some momentum into that quarterfinal game that I believe would be against Colorado. So that's all for today. I appreciate everyone listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.